Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Today our group would like to share our presentation. Okay, before we start, let me introduce our team. I'm Aghnia, Amelia, Husna, and my friend is Firqoh, Zahra, and Hanafi. We work together to prepare this material and we hope it's clear and useful. So, in today's presentation, we are going to talk about discourse and pragmatic contextual meaning in language teaching. We will explain it in a simple way and give examples so it's easier to understand. The first one, let's talk about the concept of pragmatic approach in discourse analysis. The pragmatic approach in discourse analysis basically looks at how people use language in real situations, not just the literal meaning of the word. The main idea is that what someone say and what they actually mean can be different and the meaning often depends on the situation, the relationship between the speakers and what they want to achieve in this conversation. This approach helps us understand hidden meanings, intention, and how people communicate politely or indirectly in everyday life. So, instead of only focusing on grammar or sentence structure, the pragmatic approach helps us see how meaning is created and understood in real communication. Before moving on the definition, it's helpful to look at the key aspects that are usually discussed in this approach. There are four key aspects that are commonly explained. The first one is context, which means the meaning of an utterance depends on where the conversation happens, who is involved, and what the purpose is. And the second aspect is speakage, which treats language as an action, like requesting, apologizing, dancing, or giving comments. The third is implicator and presupposition, which deals with meanings that are not said directly but are understood by the listener, as well as the assumption behind the speaker's word. The last aspect is politeness and face theory, which focus on how people use language to sound polite, respect others, and maintain good social relationships. These aspects show that meaning is not only in the words, but also in how we use them. Okay, now after understanding this aspect, we can continue to the definition of pragmatics and discourse analysis, so the whole idea becomes clearer. Okay, pragmatic is basically to study of how people understand and use language based on the situation. It explains how we express meaning that goes beyond the literal words and how listeners figure out what the speaker really wants to say by paying attention to the context. On the other hand, discourse analysis is the study of language beyond single sentence. Let's look at how people use language to communicate smoothly, manage topic, take turn in conversation, build relationship, and create meaningful interaction. When these two ideas are combined, they help us understand not only the words being spoken, but also the deeper meanings behind them in real communication.
Focus of pragmatics on contextual meaning and implicature. Pragmatics in discourse analysis focus on how meaning depends on context. As Patrick in 2012 explained, speakers and listeners interpret utterance by considering factors such as settings, social relation, cultural norms, and shared knowledge. Meaning is therefore not fixed but constructed through interaction. So, context helped explain why the same utterance can be understood in the differently depending on who say it, to whom, and in what situation. For the example, it's called in here maybe a statement, a request, or it can be a complaint. It was depending on the speaker's intention. So pragmatics provide tool to understand how such meanings are inverted. Implicator is another key concept. referring to implied meaning beyond the literal word. Based on Greece cooperative principle, implicator occurs when speakers intentionally flown conversational maxims to convey extra meaning. For instance, some of the students' pace may imply that not all pace, and pragmatic help to identify these unstated but understood meanings. And Walls in 2011 shows how contextual meaning and implicator work in interactive settings like classroom, where teachers and students interpret the hints, indirect instruction, or evaluative comments to keep communication smooth. Thus, pragmatics play an essential role in discourse analysis by showing how language usually imply, persuade, and manage relationship, and how meanings is negotiated through context, intention, and shared understanding.
3. Connection between pragmatic and discourse in interpreting utterance. The connection between pragmatics and discourse analysis is most evident in the process of interpreting utterance. That is, understanding what speaker mean within particular communicative context, while discourse analysis provides the broader framework for examining how text interaction are structured. Pragmatic offer the interpretive tools needed to decode meaning, intention, and infer at the levels of individual utterance. According to Paul Traits 20 and 12, interpreting utterance requires attention not only to the linguistic form but also to contextual, cultural, and interpersonal factors that influence meaning. Pragmatics enables discourse analysis to go beyond surface level analysis by focusing on how interlocutors use shared knowledge, presupposition, and conversational norms to interpret what is said. Thus, meaning in discourse is not simply transmitted, it is co-constructed between speaker and listeners through pragmatic processes such as inference, relevance, and contextual reasoning. Walls 20 and 11 highlights this interconnection in his theory of classroom discourse, where interpreting utterance involves understanding both the pedagogical purpose and the pragmatic force of language. For example, when a teacher says, "Can we try that again?" it may function as a directive rather than a genuine question. The interpretation depends on recognizing the pragmatic intent behind the utterance and the institutional context of the classroom interaction. Walls argues that effective interpretation in discourse requires sensitivity to these pragmatic goals, which reveal how power roles and relationships are managed through language. This connection shows that discourse analysis and pragmatic work hand in hand. Discourse analysis identifies the structural and the thematic pattern of communication, while pragmatic provides the analytical means to interpret the speaker intended meaning and listener inferred understanding within those patterns. Together, they explain how utterance perform communicative action, convey social meaning, and construct intellectual reality.
Next material is language, context, and discourse. Language, context, and discourse are closely connected because meaning in communication is never created by words alone. Language is more than vocabulary and grammar. It's something people use depending on the situation they are in and how they are talking to. Discourse refers to language in actual use, which show how people express identity, relationship, and intention in real situations. When we study discourse, we don't only look at a sentence one by one. We pay attention to how the situation shapes the meaning, how people interact, and how message shift depending on context. That's why studying discourse always require understanding context because context tells us what the speaker truly means and how listener interpret the message. Next is type of context. Context is one of the main things that help us understand the real meaning behind an utterance. There are three types of context that influence how messages are interpreted: psychological context, social context, and linguistic context. Each one plays a different role in helping people understand what is being communicated. So, the first type of context is physical context, refers to the actual environment where communication takes place, the location, the object around, the time, and the situation. Sometimes meaning can only be understood by looking at what is happening around the speakers. For example, if someone says put it there, we know what it and there mean because we can see the shared cycle space. Second is social context. Social context is about the relationship between the speakers, their roles, status, closeness, and cultural expectation. The same sentence can sound like a friendly request when said between friends, but it can feel like an instruction when said by a teacher to a student. Social context shapes tone, politeness, and how direct or indirect the message should be. And the last type of context is linguistic context. Linguistic context, also called CO text, is about the surrounding words in the conversation. The meaning of a sentence often depends on what we said before or after it. A sentence like "that was great" could be sincere or sarcastic depending on the previous lines. Linguistic context help maintain coherence, so the conversation or text makes sense as a whole. Next is number two, the importance of context in understanding speaker meaning. Context is extremely important because it connects what is said with what is actually meant. Many times speakers do not express their meaning directly. Instead, listeners understand the true message from shared knowledge, tone, situation, and background information. Without context, even simple instruction can become confusing. For example, when a teacher say, "Please open your book to page 17," the message seems straightforward. But if students don't know which book, or if the situation is noisy, or if the tone makes it sound urgent or relaxed, the meaning can change. They show that understanding context is necessary to avoid misunderstanding and to interpret the speaker's intention accurately. Teaching language without paying attention to context often results in students memorizing sentences without knowing how to use them naturally. Next is number three, application of contextual understanding in daily discourse and classroom communication. In real life communication and in the classroom, understanding context has very practical benefit. When teachers pay attention to cycle context, they can set up the room in a way that encourages better interaction, like arranging seats for group discussion. When they understand social context, they can build a comfortable atmosphere where students feel respected and confident, which increases participation. When linguistic context is considered, teacher can use real conversation, story, or maybe meaningful activity instead of isolated grammar exercise. Also, applying um, this in the classroom can be challenging because of limited time, large class size, or strict curriculum. It is still possible to balance theory and practice. Even small activities that let students use language in natural situations help them understand meaning more effectively and communicate more confidently.
Speech art theory. Speech art theory was introduced by Hussein in 1962 in How to Do Things with Words and later developed by Shirley in 1979. Before this theory, language was viewed mainly as a description of fact, and every sentence was judged based on truth condition. For example, the truth of your smile is very charming depends on what whether it actually charm people. And Austin argued that not all utterance can be judged true or false. Like a sentence like "don't enter" cannot be tested for truth because it doesn't describe a fact. A fact. It performs an action, and according to him, using language means performing action, called performative speech. And Austin divided utterance into two types, which is constative, which describe fact and can be true or false, and performative, which is create action such as warning or comment. A performative utterance is considered successfully um, can be felicitous only if these three conditions are met. The first condition was about the right situation and person. So the speaker must have authority and speak in the proper context. And the second was correct procedure. So the act must follow the appropriate steps. And the last was about sincerity, which is the speakers must genuinely intend the action. If only of these conditions fail, the speech act become invalidous. And the second was types of speech act. It has locutionary, illusionary, and prolocutionary. And according to Saifuddin in 2019, speech act consists of vocabulary act, which is parsing meaning sentence. For the example, today we will learn about verbs. And second, illusionary act, which is performing an action through speech such as ordering. For the example, please turn to page 25. And last, prolocutionary act, when the effect of utterance on the listener is like students start doing the exercise after hearing a comment. These three acts actually occur together in communication, like saying something, intending something, and creating an effect. And example of this speech act in the classroom interaction, based on Vijayanti 2020, notes that teachers and students use various speech acts in class. For the first was the directive speech act, which is requires requests or comments such as please read the first paragraphs. And the second, assertive speech act, starting fact or explanation like this is passive sentence. And the last is expressive speech act, when it's expressing feelings or attitude, such as very good, you understood the material. The speech art make classroom interaction more meaningful, with teacher acting as guides and student responding actively. This material is about presupposition and discourse. And first, the definition and the type of presupposition. A presupposition is information assumed to be true by both the speaker and listener before a sentence is spoken. It contains implied meaning that's not stated directly but is still understood. In this course, presupposition help maintain coherence and prevent misunderstanding. According to Lailia et al. In 2021, they also allow speakers or writers to convey ideas or attitudes subtly. Presuppositions are divided into six types. It's according to Al Hafiz in 2019, and the first one is about the existential presupposition. Assumes the existence of someone or something. For the example, that person is walking, and it shows that someone exists and is walking. And the next is factive presupposition. Assume the truth of information after certain verbs like know, realize, and regret. And for the example, he didn't realize he was sick. And it was mean he was sick. And lexical presupposition, it imply meaning contained in specific verbs. For the example, he quit smoking. And that means he used to smoke. And non-factive presupposition, it means assume something is untrue or imaginary. For the example, I imagine that I'm rich, and the meaning of this word was I'm not rich. And the next, it was structural presupposition, that means arises from sentence structure, especially why-age questions. For the example, where did you buy the blanket? Sorry, where did you buy the bike? And that means you bought. You actually bought the bike. And the last is about the counterfactual presupposition. It means contradicts reality and often appears in conditional sentence. For the example, if only the capital of West Java were in Sumedang, it's not in Sumedang. And the types helps convey implied meaning so the listener understand without explicit explanation and supporting coherence and active communication. It's according to Al Hafiz in 2019. And the next was a function of presupposition in maintaining meaning and coherence. So presupposition help maintaining meaning and coherence in discourse by ensuring that each utterance is understood logically. Without them, context would be unclear. And according to Francisca in 2016, presupposition function to the first one is reduce barriers to interpretation. Um, its shared background knowledge allow faster understanding. For the example, my father come from Surabaya. It means the speaker has father and Surabaya is a city. And the next is maintain coherence between utterance. It means they connect one sentence to another one. For the example, is Andy still the neighbor? Is Andy still the neighbor head? And it means Andy was previously the head. And the next is maintain coherence of ideas. They help link ideas logically across a text. For the example, the president reiterated. So the example, he emphasized it before. And the next is maintain continuity of meaning. It means share assumption, keep communication smooth. For the example, who hasn't submit their assessment? This question means there is an assessment. And for the last one, it was ensure efficient and clear communication. They avoid unnecessary repetition and keep discourse focused. And we continue to the example of presupposition in media and language teaching. And the first, we'll talk about in media first. It have social or government news, political discourse, economic news, and the last is entertaining news. Okay, for the first one was about the social or government news. So, for the example, the government is again distributing aid, and that means aid was distributed before. And the next political discourse, the president finally kept his promise. That means he made a promise earlier. And the next is economic news. That means price have risen again. Price increase. That means price increased previously. And the last is about the entertainment news. When the actor, for the example, the actor returned to action films. That means he acted in them before and took a break. And the second one, it was about in teaching. It has a different type, which is the first one, it's classroom interaction, the second teacher explanation, and the third was about reflective questions. For the first one, classroom interaction, for the example, who hasn't submitted their assessment, it means the assessment exists. And the second, the teacher explanation, the example was about we will continue yesterday's discussion. So that means the discussion happened on the yesterday. And for the last one is reflective question. For the example, what did you understand from the last week's test? It means students read a text on the last week. And according to Lailia et al. In 2021, presupposition help maintain topic continually, build shared context, and support easier interpretation without repeating information.
A. Pragmatic in classroom discourse. 1. Application of pragmatic concept in classroom discourse. Pragmatics plays a crucial role in shaping how meaning is constructed and interpreted in classroom communication. It focuses on not only on the structure of language but also on how meaning is negotiated in real-life context. In teaching and learning, pragmatic competence is essential because communication between teacher and student extends beyond grammar and vocabulary. It encompasses intention, politeness, inference, and shared understanding. Walls 20 and 11 argues that classroom discourse should be viewed not merely as linguistic behavior but also a pedagogical tool through which learning happens. He introduced the concept of classroom interactional competence or CIC, which refers to teacher and learner's ability to manage classroom interaction effectively to facilitate learning. CIC emphasizes how interactional choice, pausing, reformulating, repairing, and scaffolding create learning opportunities and foster understanding. The classroom, therefore, is both a linguistic and social environment where language is the means and the object of learning. A teacher pragmatic sensitively knowing how much to simplify, how to elicit responses, and when to intervene determines the success of instructional interaction. For example, a teacher may transfer a routine question into a dialogue once. Can anyone tell me the main idea? This means what message do you think the writer wants us to understand here? This shift turns a display question into a referential one, inviting deeper reasoning and shared construction of meaning. Walls and Men 20 and 15 later emphasized that teachers can enhance their CIC through reflective practice such as analyzing their classroom interaction via video recording to become more aware of their communicative impact. Another essential framework in classroom discourse is the initiation response feedback IRF model, first developed by Sinclair and Goddard. Although it supports classroom organization and overreliance on this structure can surprise student initiative. Pragmatically skilled teachers modify the IRF pattern to encourage elaboration and higher order thinking. 2. The teacher-student communication strategies: politeness, speech act, and social context. Teacher-student communication in the classroom involves a variety of pragmatic strategies designed to maintain engagement, respect, and clarity. These include the use of politeness, speech act, and sensitivity to context. One is politeness strategies. Politeness, as described, leads and Yule refers to the language choices that sustain positive social relations and minimize potential frustrating acts. In educational settings, teachers often soften directives to balance authority with approachability. The polite version demonstrates pragmatic mitigation using modal verb and inclusive phrasing to create a more cooperative atmosphere, such as strategies reduce hierarchical distance and encourage student participation. 2 is speech act in classroom interaction. Austin and Searle's theory of speech act suggests that language performs actions such as requesting, commanding, or encouraging. In classroom context, teachers use various types of speech act to manage instruction, motivate students, and facilitate understanding. Number 3 is social context and pragmatic awareness. Meaning in communication is deeply contextual. The physical environment, participant relationship, and cultural expectation all affect how utterances are interpreted. For instance, humor or sarcasm from a teacher may motivate students in one state, one setting but cause embarrassment in another. With 2020 and 21 stresses the importance of socio-pragmatic awareness. Teachers must adapt their speech, act, and politeness strategies according to student cultural background and the social atmosphere of the class. Pragmatically competent teachers use this awareness to create inclusive, respectful learning environment where all voices are acknowledged. So the last is benefits of understanding pragmatic for effective language teaching. The application of pragmatic in classroom discourse provide numerous pedagogical benefits. Teachers who develop pragmatic awareness can foster more effective, responsive, and learner-centered instruction. Understanding pragmatic enhanced reflective teaching. Both and men suggest that by examining their classroom talk, teachers become more conscious of how their language shapes learning interaction. This awareness supports more deliberate and adaptable teaching practices. Pragmatic knowledge allows teachers to balance question types, deflect question, test factual knowledge, whereas referential question elicit reasoning and opinion. For example, is display what is the capital of France? Referential why do people prefer living in cities? A thoughtful combination of these types help promote both linguistic accuracy and critical thinking. When is teacher mastery of politeness strategies and speech act improve classroom atmosphere? Positive politeness encourages cooperation, while negative politeness maintains student and confer autonomy. Number two is pragmatic instruction through role-plays, reflecting tasks, or discourse-based activity helps students develop real-world communicative competence. With 2020 and 21 advocate for expressing teaching of pragmatic norms to cultivate socio-pragmatic sensitivity in English as a foreign language context. Through pragmatic competence contributes to supportive feedback practice. Teachers who understand how their tone, phrasing, and preparing strategies influence students are more likely to promote participation, self, and confidence. Conclusion: the study of discourse and pragmatic reveals that meaning in language is not merely a matter of grammatical structure but is profoundly shaped by context, intention, and interaction. Pragmatics complements discourse analysis by explaining how speakers use language strategically to perform action, express attitudes, and negotiate understanding within communicative events. Context, physical, social, and linguistic serve as the key factor that determines how utterances are interpreted and how effective communication unfolds. Speech act and presupposition play crucial roles in maintaining coherence and interpretability in discourse. Speech act demonstrate that every utterance carries an actional force, whether asserting, requesting, or expressing emotion, while presupposition provides shared assumption that connect ideas and ensure community of meaning. Together, they enable speaker and listener to construct coherent and efficient communication that transcend literal meaning. In the realm of language teaching, pragmatic awareness enhance classroom discourse by fostering authentic interaction between teacher and student. Teachers who understand pragmatic principles can adapt their speech act, politeness strategies, and feedback mechanism to create inclusive, engaging, and contextually meaningful learning environment. Pragmatic therefore bridges the gap between linguistic form and communicating function, helping learners not only to know the language but also to use appropriately and effectively in real context. The integration of discourse analysis and pragmatic and rich both linguistic theory and pedagogical practice. It deepens our understanding of how meaning is co-constructed in communication and provide valuable insight for developing communicative competence in language education.
So that's all from our group and thank you for listening. We hope this explanation give a clear picture of how pragmatic works in real communication. Okay, so wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.